Hi, this is Mike Gurness. I want to welcome you to the CQ Factors 3-part video training series on that missing link to increasing your business value for getting paid more and obtaining more career opportunities. Because there really has been a missing link, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. So we've broken this into 3 different videos. The first video is about understanding how and when and who creates our value in business, who judges us, and what judgments determine our level of compensation, our opportunities that are granted to us, the upward mobility that we generate or that we're given. So that's the focus of the first video, is getting clear on who judges us, who determines, in essence, how much money we're going to get paid. And we like to say that, well, that's us and it's our own mentality. And sure, that has something to do with it. But ultimately, there's somebody else that's making the call and determining how much you get paid and whether you do get and whether you are granted a promotion or upward mobility or greater autonomy, within your career itself. So there really is a third party out there that's making these determinations. So we'll talk about that. Video 2 is going to be about why this opportunity has been overlooked for so long and what we can do to take advantage of this overlooked opportunity. And in video 3, we're going to take a good hard look at what does it actually take to take this novel and strategic idea and actually get it implemented successfully into your career, into your skill sets, so you can enjoy the benefits that come with a greater level of CQ. So those are the 3 videos. Today, it's all about clarifying how and when our business value is actually determined. And let's begin with something that we all wonder, and some of us maybe more consistently or frequently or loudly than others, such as who determines how much we earn and how that value is actually determined and when your business value is being judged. And finally, what skill set most determines your fate in business? And to me, when I step back and look at this list of questions, they're smart things to be wondering about and smart things to be studying because they have a very profound effect on 2 major aspects of our life. So one of them is our financial security. And then the other is our career opportunities, our career autonomy to be able to choose what we want to do or pursue. To me, both of those are pretty important. And as I've entered kind of that middle stage of my career, I certainly can appreciate the value of both of those things. It's not necessarily money to die with most toys. It has a lot to do with having that security so you don't have to worry about how the bills are going to get paid. Or on the career side, you don't feel like you have to be stuck in a certain type of job description or a certain type of career or industry for that matter. If you know you've got the autonomy, the flexibility to choose, where would you like to go next? What would you like to study next? How would you like to experience your working hours differently? And again, having the ability to pursue that versus feeling trapped or stuck in a career that kind of has you on a railroad track. And that's just not a great feeling. So today we're going to clarify who does decide your business value and how they determine your value and when that judgment takes place and what skill set you can develop to directly improve your business value. And so that's, again, kind of a tall order in some ways, but in other ways, I've spent the last 20 years trying to clarify this down to a fine point, and I'm going to figure out how to present this to you in a fairly terse way, and I'm sure that some questions can come up, and that's why I want you to feel free to reach out and ask questions, and because in this video medium, all we have is an opportunity for a monologue where I'm going to present this to you, and I'm obviously trying to present it in a very quick way to keep this video length to a minimum. However, it's really important stuff. And this kind of information, you've heard bits and pieces of it before. But what we want to do is really clarify that and help you remember some of these things and hopefully stimulate you to make that choice to develop your CQ. And it doesn't have to be with me or with us here at the CQ Factor. This is really promoting how you can do this on your own. And, if you have the mindset where you like having coaches and you like having some people kind of give you a direct path, great, not a problem, love to help you. But at the same time, we really want to tee up this content. So if you're kind of that self-study mindset that you can take this information and run with it and develop it. But please do share your experiences with us and your wins, because that's why we do this. That is our message, and we want to help as many people as possible. And now let's get into that first question of who decides our business value. And it's an interesting question. Sometimes you can think of, well, it's a compensation committee or it's my customers who are only willing to pay so much an hour for services or so much for an activity or a delivery of some sort. And those are all parts of the answer. But I think it's easiest and probably most helpful to look at the answer this way. The people who are deciding our business value really are our customers. But the key here is it's not our customers as we think of external customers, the people that are writing our company's checks or signing contracts and doing such. It's our specific customers where we all have different titles, job descriptions, we're in different types of companies. But one thing that's absolutely common for anybody who is in business is we are being compensated for supporting our set of customers. And the support can look different and the activities can look different. But in essence, it helps for us to understand that we are receiving payment for an expected level of support. And our customers can vary. And what I have here is a list of customers that go from kind of the obvious to the less obvious, but they're all our customers. And I'm sure there's others that we can get into more nuances. But let's run through this list so we're all clear. The first one is external customers. Depending on your role, that can make complete sense. If you're in the customer support space, or if you're in sales, or if you're an entrepreneur who is directly working with clients, that's going to be a kind of a natural one. It's the cliche one when we think about customers. But then if we are in more middle management or if we're in larger organizations, a lot of times our customers are internal customers and interdepartment, or they're even colleagues and individuals. So that will be another type of customer that is important for us to think through. And one of the things I'll be asking you at the end of this video to do for homework is to create that list of who are your customers. And sometimes less obvious at first glance, another important customer that we have is our boss and other higher authorities. And oftentimes we don't think that way. We don't perceive our boss as being a customer, but it's not only intelligent and strategic to do so, but it'll be very much appreciated by your boss also. And you don't need to go any further than if you have direct reports, reverse the role and think about, as we go through this information, see yourself in that position. And if your direct reports were coming to you with this strategy that we're going to be talking about. So bosses and higher authorities are absolutely customers, and they're very important ones. And the last one is direct reports. This is another one that is probably even less obvious, and that's direct reports absolutely are our customers also. The organization is paying us, or if it's our organization, we're still getting compensated, or part of our development of the company plan is to grow our people. And it's part of our obligation to support those people and help them grow and understand who is going to be a great contributor and also who are the people that really ought to not stay around for a host of different reasons. And so that's our fourth type of customer. And if we get into breaking this down into more detail, we can start looking at partners and different types of entities outside of the organization that are also customers, and vendors. And so this idea of customers won't be limited to this, but it will give you that taste of, hey, who are the key relationships that I really need to manage to bring success to my organization, as well as for my organization to place value on what I'm doing for these people. So those are the people who are deciding our value. And obviously, a lot of this happens not overtly and not clearly. And in fact, this desire for me to clarify this dynamic really came from me on the other side of the coin. Like, I'd be brought into organizations to turn them around, to make them profitable. And a lot of times that meant initially removing quite a few people from the organization and having to make very quick calls on who do we keep, who do we not keep. And although I had strong feelings as to which people seemed to have an ability to create value and we needed to keep them around versus others that didn't, I didn't know how I was making those calls. I didn't know what were those levers that I was using, or what were the measurement criteria that I was using to understand who I thought should stay and who should go home. And over time, again, much of what you're going to be hearing today are distinctions that I clarified and understood, even though I wasn't thinking them out loud at the time. These are the different ways that I'm judging people's values. So that's who is judging us. And now let's look at how customers determine value. And it's very well researched what creates customer loyalty and what customers are looking for. And I've provided the 4 top reasons that are universal. So customers value service providers who create results despite constraints. Another way of thinking about this is that the service provider kind of looks past and doesn't use it as an excuse the limitations of the customer, which could be budget, it could be experience, it could be bandwidth, it could be many different potential constraints. But what the customer feels is that the service provider understands that there are some limitations, but they don't allow that to become an excuse for not figuring out how to get results. And they don't do it in a way that is judgmental or degrading or demeaning. The second one is that the customer feels that the service provider helps them avoid problems. helps them understand potential issues in advance. So it saves time, energy, resources. And so that relationship is seen as advantageous or helpful because the service provider is watching out for their best interest. The third one is that the service provider will offer unique insights and ideas to the customer proactively. They come to the table with thoughts and strategies and things that the customer may see as valuable, and they do so in a proactive way. And the fourth one is that when the service provider feels that the customer has limiting beliefs, that they challenge those things. But they obviously do it in a way that is supportive and again, not judgmental. But the customer realizes that the service provider is willing to call them on limitations that they are in their thoughts or in their approach. And they, again, do it in a collaborative way. So those are the four most simple traits that customers are looking for. And I've chosen these four both because they're very popular and well understood, as well as they're very universal, independent of the list of customers that you may have specific in your situation. So, for example, if you're a salesperson, this is overtly obvious, but if you're a middle manager, these things will be very applicable for your boss, for your direct reports, for your internal customers, etc. And again, you can just try this on yourself. And if you have direct reports, ask yourself, how would you feel, or how do you feel, when your direct reports come to you proactively and help point out issues that you may come across or that you may experience that will cost you resources, time, energy, etc. And they do so proactively in advance, and they save you and they help you sidestep potential issues. How would you feel about that? Same thing about bringing new ideas and insights to the table, as well as being able to identify some limiting beliefs you may have that are really hurting your productivity or holding things back. So try this list out on yourself. Try the list out with your boss. Try the list out with anybody you want. You can ask about how would they feel if these types of topics or this type of a dynamic was taking place. And you'll see time and again that these are the things that people are looking for. They just don't say it. And they're not even that clear on the fact that this is what they're looking for until you tee them up in questions and you put them in surveys and things like that. So that's the how customers determine our value. How often do we bring these types of things to the table? More often, more value. Less often, obviously, the antithesis, less value. And the next one is when customers determine our value. I love this one, and it took me years to really get my arms around the details of this, but let me see if I can get through this quickly and clearly for you. So it starts with Pareto's principle, and that is that 20% of our work activities generate 80% of the realized business value. And that means both the actual value that the business will receive from your efforts, as well as the value that people place on you for generating those results. And when we look at this 80-20 principle in our work activities, it's important to understand that at the bottom of that pyramid, the things that we do really frequently, and they're necessary, will be things like standard communications. And those could be anything from emails to texts to telephone calls to ad hoc conversations and things that just take place throughout the entire week. Then one step above that is an interesting one, and that's our core production activities. And I've defined production as performing the main job description, the thing that you thought you were hired to the organization to do. And I'll keep using the accounting analogy just to make it as simple and redundant as possible. So if we were hired into an organization to perform accounting tasks or as an accountant, then core production would really be those accounting activities. It would be the preparation and the generation of the financial documents that are required in that particular job description. And so it is important to understand that even though that's why you're hired to the organization, and you must do it to stay employed at the location, and you'll obviously have a plethora of problems if you can't do that activity. But when you really look at the value that it creates for you and the organization, yeah, there's some there, but it's not the differentiator. And you don't need to go any further than looking at accounting firms and say, or any leaders for that matter, in any organization, and see, did they get there because they performed their core production activities better than everybody else? And consistently what you find is, no, that wasn't it. So you look at the managing director of an accounting firm, and they will not be the best technical accountant in the shop. They will have brought other things, mainly CQ, to the table, and that's what allowed them to move up through the organization. They were able to collaborate better with other people. They were able to facilitate tough discussions. They were able to uncover, what their clients or their customers' issues were and resolve them and be productive in those lights. So the core production activities are necessary. We better be able to perform our core tasks, but that's not going to be the differentiator. And if you don't get anything else from this entire training series, that just becoming better at your named profession is not going to be the thing that's going to bring you the autonomy, the options in your career, the upward mobility, the additional pay, the freedom and flexibilities that come with people that become a bigger and bigger asset for the organization or for customers. And then when we move up one more notch, we look at basic management activities. And that would be things where we are interacting with and coordinating with multiple groups within an organization, but they're going to be the standard management activities. They're not going to be the things that we'll talk about next. It's the kind of the day-to-day or week-to-week transactional types of activities that are required by managers. And again, yes, they are important and they need to be done, but they don't really bring that much value to both the organization or to you for performing them. Compared to, we go up to our 20%. And now we get up to that magical 20% activities that provide so much value and generate so many results for the organization. And I've simplified this area down into a definition of one's performance in important customer meetings and conversations. And obviously that deserves a little bit more clarity and a little bit more development. So when we drill into this further and we talk about managing important meetings and conversations with customers, we also see that as a person's CQ or their level of CQ or their level of intelligence for being able to manage important conversations. So what's going on in these important meetings and conversations really is where the rubber hits the road for organizations. And when you break down any company initiative, whether it's to generate more revenue or decrease operational costs or make a pivot on a strategy, what you'll find is that there are many, many steps in the execution of that process. But you will find every single time that somewhere in those steps, and oftentimes multiple times throughout those steps, you will have key conversations where there's an outcome that needs to happen in order for that initiative to move forward or to be successful. So I'll take the simplest example of, let's say we want to increase revenues and we're going to do it the fastest way that there exists in business. And that's going to be, we're going to sell an additional product to an existing customer. And when we break that out, and let's say that strategy even came from a board meeting, and then the board had disseminated that down into upper management, and the upper management broke that into some basic initiatives and strategies, and then disseminated that information into multiple departments. And the marketing department did their bit, and the customer service team did their bit, and the sales team did their bit. And you have all these activities. But what we find is that the ultimate performance measurement metric of increased revenues, for example, in this particular case, is not going to change until we have a successful conversation, a very important conversation with a client with a very clear outcome of we need them to say yes to agree to purchase an additional product for us to actually have success with that initiative. Everything else was a ton of activity, but all hinging on the outcome of one of these conversations. And so when we look at even my first example here of a meeting and conversation example of client sales meeting, the desired outcome is they decide to say yes on a new contract. And what we realize then in this top 20% is we have a series of very important conversations that are taking place week in and week out. And they'll differ from company to company and teams and individuals, but these things are taking place and they're extremely leveraged. And what happens is we just kind of look past some of these things and we just throw it in as just another step in the process, when in reality, it's a highly, highly leveraged step. And if that particular step goes well, even a few percentage points more frequently than it would have or it could have without some additional attention, and oftentimes it just blends into just yet another step. However, when we look at how critical and how much hinges on that conversation with the customer and the customer understanding the value prop and why they should move forward, it's interesting and concerning as well as exciting on how little attention we place on these conversations. And so I have this one example here, number one, of client sales meeting. And the desired outcome is that the client decides to say yes on a new contract, right? So that's just one of those examples of very important, very leveraged types of meetings. And another example is number two, a monthly management meeting. And let's say, for example, that we're aware that there's a potential problem that the group is going to face and that we are aware of this. And the desired outcome that we have for that meeting is that we get that information surfaced and it is used as part of the decision-making process on how to move forward. And so here's another example of how, and the outcome is an important one. And if we make the right decision, we'll avoid an issue and avoid spending time and resources and having other negative consequences. But it is in question. It's in question for a lot of reasons. One common one is, does the knowledge even get put on the table, for discussion? So oftentimes I work with groups, and part of it is getting people to speak up. They're afraid of speaking up and being seen as controversial or problematic, and they just don't know how to share information, especially sensitive or potentially irritating and challenging information, in a way that comes across as collaborative. And so a lot of times, these potential conversations don't even happen, which is truly an important problem that can be addressed, through the development of the CQ. And another example would be number three, the performance review of a direct report. And there's a desired outcome of sharing some unique insights and ideas on how that direct report can improve themselves, better the results, better their productivity, further help the organization. But how often do we have these performance reviews where a boss may have this knowledge or insight, but it doesn't get surfaced, or it doesn't get surfaced in a way that is well received by the direct report, and so it's not acted upon. And so that's another opportunity that we have a chance to really leverage knowledge and really change direction of something or add or enhance something, and it falls short and it doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen to the degree that it could. And so it's just, again, another loss for the organization. It's another loss for, in this case, a direct report. And it's another opportunity where the manager is simply not supporting the organization to the best of their ability. Once again, a higher level of CQ would mean a greater likelihood of a better conversation, more information being shared, and a more likely outcome of that direct report really embracing those ideas and acting upon them and further helping themselves and the organization. And the fourth one is a one-on-one meeting with your boss. The desired outcome could be to change their perception on an issue. And here's a classic one. How often do we feel that we have a better idea or better understanding of what's going on than our boss does, but we refrain from having the discussion, or we get frustrated and quit too early, and the issue continues. And so again, it's an example of one of these leveraged conversations where if something good happens, it really has a long tail effect on how the people can grow, how the organization can grow, how innovation can happen better, how we can avoid problems, and how we can create better quality results, period. So I think the best way to summarize this concept of the 80-20 rule is that the 20% of the activities that are providing all the value consist of actually having the conversations that move the needle. So whether it's having that conversation with the customer where they actually say yes and more revenue comes in because of it, or when we're having a conversation with a group of individuals on how their behaviors need to change or their processes need to change in a way that they accept it and they embrace it and they make those changes happen efficiently, those are going to be moving the needle. And it could be a cost needle or it could be a revenue needle. But it's through the use of conversations where people are actually deciding to change their behavior or deciding to make a decision or modifying their perception of a key issue in a way that can better support the organization. All these things are taking place in that common medium of direct conversations. And that's the point, and that's where and why CQ is so crucial. So when we go back and we really hammer on the clarity of what we mean by CQ, it's the intelligence to manage important customer conversations. It's when we're actually creating results for our organization. And to be really clear on this definition, I've even gone further to define the words within the definition. So for example, intelligence. It's important for us when we say the intelligence to manage important customer conversations, what we mean by intelligence is the ability to both acquire and apply knowledge and skills, right? That's intelligence. It's not just enough to know that we should be empathetic, that we should ask questions before we start telling people what to do, that we should make sure that we communicate and come across as a trustworthy colleague. It's much like the example that I gave in the revenue strategy. None of that execution makes a difference until the customer actually says yes. They make a decision to move forward with us. In the area of intelligence, it doesn't matter how smart you are about having knowledge on how you should behave. It's all about, do you apply that knowledge in those important conversations? So again, that's what we mean by intelligence. And then manage. When we say the intelligence to manage important customer conversations, we mean to interact in a way that develops trust and educates people's perceptions, behaviors, and decisions. We are expecting ourselves to interact in a way that develops trust, not alienates people. And we've seen it go both ways. And so when we're talking about CQ, we're saying that we are going to, we have the skills and we have the knowledge on ensuring that we manage those conversations in a way that we are collaborative. We do come across as trustworthy. We do facilitate a conversation that creates more clarity and more understanding between both groups. So that's our definition for manage. And the same thing can be said for important conversations. We need to understand that there are many different types of conversations out there, but the ones that we're focusing on and the ones that are part of the 80-20 rule are the important conversations where there is a desired outcome. So if there is something that we want from the other people, which could be support, it could be a change of behavior, it could be for them to make a decision, it could be for them to see a situation in alignment with the way we need them to see it. Any of those things could be desired outcomes, but that defines what an important conversation is. And then lastly, customers. Those are the people, as we discussed earlier, that we're paid to support. They're our bosses, our external customers, our coworkers, our direct reports, and the list goes on. So it's how smart are we, how intelligent are we on managing those important conversations with our customers? And CQ, the conversation quotient, is that level at which we execute on that. So I really hope that that definition provides you some clarity and provides you some excitement around the opportunity to better yourself in this area. Because this particular type of intelligence, this conversation quotient, is incredibly important for the organization as well as for our own careers. But I want to share with you a couple of warnings that we oftentimes can kind of fall into. And I know that I've been guilty of both of these. And so the first one is, if you believe that CQ is a God-given talent, then I want to make sure that we challenge that belief, because it isn't serving you, it isn't accurate, but it is certainly something that we oftentimes attribute to people's communication skills. They have the gift of gab, which is so wrong in so many different ways, but it is something that you can hear and you've probably thought of in the past. And what I say here is that some people have a tendency to associate CQ with a person's inherent personality, and this can't be further from the truth. Anyone can learn how to more effectively develop their ability to manage important conversations or to increase their CQ. In fact, in less than 8 hours of training, we consistently are able to make measurable improvements in a person's CQ. And I'll say any person's CQ. And we've seen it with patent attorneys, we've seen it with salespeople, we've seen it with CEOs and board of directors, and we've seen it with frontline employees. So trust me on this one, that CQ is something that can be developed. And the last one here, C, is incredibly important to our team. And we want to make sure that people at least have a choice on whether they develop their CQ or not. It says everyone has a choice whether to develop their most important business skill. And I guess that's not exactly accurate yet, because most people don't even know it's an option. A lot of people do think that, hey, my personality is kind of what I was born with and kind of developed as a kid, and it is what it is. And as it relates to managing important conversations, the ones that will really move you up through an organization, the ones that customers will place a great deal of value on you for, it's a skill. It's absolutely no different than riding a bike. And with some time and effort and focused practice, you can develop this skill too. The second warning I want to share with you is when you feel you're already a great communicator. And there's something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is a little bit of a harsh definition, but I put it up here anyway. And it's a cognitive bias wherein relatively unskilled individuals suffer from illusionary superiority, mistakenly assessing their ability to be much higher than is accurate. And this is probably easier to understand when we look at the situation of drivers. When has anyone ever said that they're a bad driver? Yet we observe numerous people probably a day driving poorly. It's a very similar situation in the sense that, when we're not really skilled at something, we typically think we're pretty good at it. And then if we take a more masterful approach at something, we begin to realize that where we were and even where we are after some decent amount of practice is far from being very good at what that is. So same thing can apply whether we're looking at driving skills, and certainly the same situation applies when we're looking at communication skills. And I always find this interesting because the people that come out of the woodwork for our training are oftentimes the best and most experienced communicators out there. And they follow the same path that, when they get into communication, they begin to study it, they realize how many more levels there are above them. And so they become much more humble with their assessments of themselves. And another reason why it's a little bit tricky for people to get a real read on how effective they are or how much better they could be is B, which is that CQ has been difficult to measure, making it hard to provide people accurate feedback on their skills. So even if we lost our natural tendency to think that we're typically better than we really are, we don't really have a way of measuring ourselves in terms of getting feedback as to how good are we or how effective are we at communicating. So those are both some issues that we struggle with in this area. And the reason that I wanted to share this warning is because most of us fall into that bucket of we think we're actually pretty good communicators when all we really need to do is go to our boss or go to our direct reports or our customers and do a bit of a 360 review, and we'll get very different opinions as to how good we actually are. And although we can't, and we're not looking to try to provoke your boss to provide feedback on you, what we found is that by creating the CQ self-assessment that we have accessible on our website, just by taking the self-assessment, it will become more clear to you different areas that you could become more proficient in, or that you could improve upon, or you're not even using yet that you ought to be using. And that's why we always promote having people take the self-assessment. Nobody sees the results, not even us. It goes into a database so we can see and we tally how other people have answered it, so you get some feedback as to what other people have said, but we don't see the answers. It's for you, and it's up to you if you want to share those with anybody. But it's a great way of getting some feedback on how are you approaching these important conversations, and what are some of your opportunities for doing even better? And before we wrap up today's session, I want to review a few of the benefits for increasing your CQ. Because what we really want to find is that tipping point in us, that justification to say enough. I've screwed up enough deals, or I've irritated enough people, or I've shot myself in the foot enough, or I haven't created as much value as I've wanted to along the way, or people don't understand me well enough, or whatever the thing that kind of gets on your nerves about what's not working with how you interact with people currently. We want to make sure that we get enough why. We help clarify that this is something that you really want to make a change in. Because it's not just about intellectually understanding you ought to communicate more effectively. We need to have that emotional component to actually push you to do the things necessary to develop those skills, to develop those habits, to practice enough to develop the discipline. So when you are actually in these meetings, that you've practiced and you're aware enough of them that you actually use these ideas and strategies to your benefit. And to the degree that you're bought in emotionally and you can see how this is going to support you, it's going to support your family, it's going to support your company, it's easier to do that. So really quick, here are a few of the benefits that we oftentimes see when people increase their CQ. A, obtain greater financial security by increasing your need to be retained by the company or customer. There's no question that I've seen this hundreds, if not thousands of times in my career, that we are making choices on who to keep and who not to keep, or which vendor to retain and which one to let go. And the economics of the haves and the have-nots there are incredible. So if you want to have more stickiness with an organization or a customer, make sure that you're delivering on that list of what customers are looking for. And to the degree that you do that, it really is the degree of stickiness that you're going to enjoy. B, increase your level of autonomy with more career options. Same thing. I cannot fathom to guess how many times I have brought career opportunities to people that I felt were great at collaborating, were great at communicating, were effective at finding solutions and not getting emotional with some of the constraints. As well as I've been blessed with what people have brought to me, whether it's options or stock or compensation or contracts or any other type of value that people could come to me and offer me. And again, what they were looking for in exchange was delivery on result in alignment, once again, with that magical list of what people are looking for. And C, the third one, feel more heard and understood by your key customers. And this may not have the same economic value, but it certainly has high emotional value. I know that it's incredibly frustrating when you feel like you've got information that really could be helpful to other people and they just either don't understand or you don't have their attention. And the whole thing is just irritating. It's frustrating, and it's just not a great way to experience one's career, is feeling like you're just not being able to contribute like you'd like to. And last on this list, but certainly not least, and certainly not the last on the ultimate list for benefits for increasing your CQ, but it's decreased conflict with other people and groups. It's another thing that is amazing to me now is how often people are in violent agreement on more than 90% of the content that they're discussing. But there's this conflict, and they feel, and they diagnose it as conflict, because they're off on less than 10%. And making that more objective and not taking things as personally and being able to communicate in a way that prevents or sidesteps a lot of the typical snafus that create conflict and resistance. Again, it's a lovely way to go through work days and weeks and careers, for that matter. So, and I hope that even just with these 4 simple ones, that there's something there that kind of is a bell that goes off in your head or in your heart of saying, I want more of this, and show me something, show me a process by which I can obtain more of this, and it will make a meaningful difference in my life. And if you're feeling that way or thinking that way, then I'll consider this slide worthwhile. Lastly, so let's make some things happen today. We don't need to wait until the 3rd video. You can actually start working on your CQ right now. And it can be as simple as just identifying who your key customers are. Who determines your business value? When you go back and you think about your boss, your external customers, your internal customers, your direct reports, it could be partners, VARs, vendors, whomever. Who are your key customers that really determine how much value you have at your business? That's an important list. Start developing that. And as we go through the other videos, I'm sure there'll be more clarity, but start with that list. And then secondly, develop your key conversation types. What is your set of important conversations for your specific job description? And it may help. We've developed a key conversation assessment on our website also. It's in the same area as the CQ self-assessment in the scorecard section. Take a look at that. It's 11 questions. It will help kind of provoke thought and maybe organize your key conversation types a bit. And it really focuses in on one at a time. And you can make a list of multiple if depending on your job description. Most people have several key conversation types. And to provide you a quick example of this is we'll just take a financial planner. A financial planner is really going to have 3 and maybe 4 key conversation types that will dictate the vast majority of the success in their career. The first one's going to be with a potential client, and how effective are they at educating that client or the potential client to becoming a customer or a client of theirs. That's one conversation type. We can call it the new customer acquisition conversation. The second conversation type will be with that same customer, but it's going to be on retention. And you could call it the conversation type of account management or account reviews. And so it will be that conversation with the existing client, and it's going to be around remotivating and reclarifying why we should continue to work together. Third conversation type is going to be with referral partners. Any financial planner would benefit greatly by having strong referral partners, such as attorneys and accountants. And if those conversations develop strong relationships and strong trust, then that will be a major win for that financial planner. And then depending on the size of the financial planner's firm or organization, they may have direct reports. They may own the organization and they have direct employees, or they may be part of a large organization. And so they'd have a key conversation type with their direct reports or their employees on how they develop them, how they hold them accountable, how they guide them to becoming more productive with the organization. So that'd be a simple example of what a financial planner's key conversation types would look like. For you, just work the list, work your customers, and feel free to reach out to us with any questions. And finally, I want to provide a quick preview of the next CQ Factor video. Here's what you're going to learn during our next video. Why CQ has been overlooked in developing business talent in the past and what's changed. Secondly, we'll introduce the ACT conversation model and how it works. And finally, how you can increase your CQ levels quickly. And that wraps up this video. I want to thank you sincerely for your attention, and I certainly look forward to your comments and questions on this material. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.